Welcome to Little English Studio, the place where history, language, and storytelling come together. In today's episode, we dive into one of the darkest and most complex figures in modern history, Adolf Hitler. His name is forever tied to war, destruction, and genocide. But his story is not only about evil, it is also about how one man's life, ideas, and actions shaped the destiny of millions and changed the course of the world forever. So sit back, listen carefully, and let us walk together through the life story of Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889, in a small town called Brno am Inn, in Austria-Hungary, near the German border. His father Alois was a strict customs officer, harsh, disciplined, and often violent. His mother, Clara, was gentle, kind, and deeply protective of her son. From the very beginning, Hitler grew up in a house where two worlds collided, the cold, authoritarian discipline of his father and the warm, emotional care of his mother. This duality would shape him anger and tenderness, cruelty and charm. As a child, Hitler was restless. He did not enjoy school rules. Teachers often described him as lazy, moody, and stubborn. But there was one thing that fascinated young Adolf: art. He loved drawing, painting, and especially sketching buildings. In his imagination, he dreamed of becoming an artist, maybe even an architect. But life had other plans. At 13, his father died suddenly. Adolf was freed from strict discipline, but also left without guidance. At 18, he applied to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, hoping to become a painter. Twice, he was rejected. The professors said he had talent for architectural sketches, but not enough skill for painting people. These rejections crushed him. He stayed in Vienna, poor and homeless, drifting between cheap hostels, selling postcards of his own drawings to survive. Vienna was a city of many cultures, full of Jews, Slavs, Hungarians, and Germans. It was here that Hitler's worldview began to harden. He listened to nationalist speeches, read anti-Semitic newspapers, and slowly absorbed ideas that blamed minorities, especially Jews, for society's problems. These years planted seeds of hatred that would later grow into a poisonous ideology. When war broke out in 1914, Hitler was 25. For him, it was a chance to escape failure and find purpose. He volunteered for the German army, joining the Bavarian regiment. In the trenches of World War I, he finally found discipline, brotherhood, and meaning. He was a messenger, running across dangerous battlefields. He fought in some of the bloodiest battles, including the Somme. Twice he was wounded. Twice he returned. For his bravery, he was awarded the Iron Cross, First Class, an honor rarely given to someone of his rank. But the war ended in 1918 with Germany's defeat. When Hitler heard the news, he was devastated. In his hospital bed, recovering from a gas attack, he cried. He felt that the German people had been betrayed, not defeated on the battlefield, but stabbed in the back by weak politicians, communists, and Jews. This myth, the stab-in-the-back legend, would become central to his political message. After the war, Germany was in chaos. The Treaty of Versailles imposed crushing reparations, stripped away territory, and humiliated the nation. Poverty, unemployment, and anger spread like fire. Hitler, lost and searching, found a new path. In 1919, he joined a small political group, the German Workers' Party. Soon, he became its most passionate speaker. His fiery words, his dramatic pauses, his emotional shouting, he could move crowds like no one else. The party changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. Its symbol, the swastika. Its enemies, communists, Jews, and anyone considered un-German. Hitler rose quickly. By 1921, he was the leader. But in 1923, he tried to seize power by force. This was the Beer Hall Putsch, a failed coup in Munich. Hitler was arrested and sent to prison. At first, this looked like the end. But prison became a turning point. In his cell, Hitler dictated a book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, part autobiography, part political manifesto. It laid out his ideas: extreme nationalism, racial purity, hatred of Jews, and the dream of a greater German empire. Few people read it at the time, but later millions would. Released after just 9 months, Hitler returned to politics. This time, he changed strategy. Instead of violent coups, he would take power legally through elections. The late 1920s brought economic collapse. The Great Depression hit Germany harder than most countries. Unemployment soared, hunger spread, and anger grew. Hitler promised hope, jobs, national pride, revenge against Versailles. His speeches electrified the masses. He staged rallies with banners, uniforms, and torches. He understood the power of symbols and spectacle. The Nazis grew from a fringe group into a national movement. In 1932, the Nazi Party became the largest in the Reichstag, the German parliament. And on January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Once in power, Hitler moved fast. After the mysterious Reichstag fire in February 1933, he claimed it was a communist plot. He used fear to pass emergency laws, suspending civil rights. Opposition parties were banned. Political enemies were arrested. By 1934, when President Hindenburg died, Hitler combined the roles of Chancellor and President, declaring himself Führer leader of Germany. He built a totalitarian state. The Gestapo, secret police, silenced critics, propaganda-controlled newspapers, films and radio. The Hitler Youth trained children to obey the Nazi vision. And at the center, Hitler himself, portrayed as Germany's savior, but his most radical policies targeted the Jews. Step by step, their rights were taken away, banned from professions, stripped of citizenship, segregated from society. This persecution escalated to violence on Kristallnacht in 1938, the night of broken glass, when synagogues were burned, Jewish shops destroyed, and thousands arrested. The road to genocide had begun. Hitler's ambitions reached beyond Germany. He dreamed of a vast empire, a Third Reich that would last 1,000 years. He began with small steps. 1936. He marched troops into the Rhineland, violating the Treaty of Versailles. The world did nothing. 1938. He annexed Austria, known as the Anschluss. Crowds cheered as he entered Vienna. Later in 1938, he demanded the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia. Britain and France, desperate to avoid war, gave in at the Munich Agreement. Hitler promised peace, but in secret he was preparing for conquest. On September 1939, Germany invaded Poland. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war. World War II had begun. At first, Hitler's armies swept through Europe with lightning speed. Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War. Poland fell. Denmark and Norway fell. France collapsed in just 6 weeks. By 1940, Hitler controlled most of Europe. He stood at the height of his power. But his ambitions grew further. In 1941, he invaded the Soviet Union. At first, the Germans advanced deep into Russia, but winter, distance, and fierce resistance slowed them. The tide of war began to turn. Meanwhile, Hitler's racial war escalated. Across occupied Europe, Jews were rounded up, forced into ghettos, and deported to concentration camps. In 1942, the Nazis planned the final solution, the systematic extermination of the Jewish people. 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust, along with millions of others: Roma, disabled people, political prisoners, and more. By 1943, Germany was on the defensive. The defeat at Stalingrad was catastrophic. Allied bombers destroyed German cities. In 1944, the Allies landed in Normandy on D-Day, opening a Western front. Hitler grew paranoid and isolated. He no longer trusted his generals, making disastrous decisions. By April 1945, Soviet troops closed in on Berlin. In his underground bunker, Hitler gave his last orders. He married Eva Braun, his longtime companion. Then, on April 30th, 1945, as the Red Army stormed the city, Adolf Hitler took his own life. The dictator was dead. Germany surrendered days later. The war in Europe was over. Hitler's legacy is one of destruction and horror. He led the world into a war that killed more than 70 million people. He unleashed a genocide that remains the most systematic attempt at extermination in human history. But his story is also a warning. Hitler did not appear from nowhere. He rose in a society broken by war, poverty, and humiliation. He used fear, anger, and propaganda to gain power, and ordinary people followed him. The story of Adolf Hitler reminds us, democracy is fragile, hatred can spread, and one man's vision can destroy millions of lives. Thank you for joining Little English Studio in exploring this difficult but important story. If you learned something new today, or if this helped you understand history better, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, history is not just about the past, it is about the lessons we carry into the future.